It's possible to do it all. Leave the job behind, work from home, and spend more time with your kids. We're going to talk about it today with special guest Lindsay Sutherland.
Today's episode is brought to you by Namecheap. There is no better option when it comes to buying your domain names. I've been a customer for more than a decade, and it's been a dream experience. Secure your new business name today at servenomaster.com. Namecheap.
Are you tired of dealing with your boss? Do you feel underpaid and underappreciated? If you want to make it online, fire your boss and start living your retirement dreams now, then you've come to the right place. Welcome to Serve No Master Podcast, where you'll learn how to open new revenue streams and make money while you sleep. Presented live from a tropical island in the South Pacific by best-selling author Jonathan Green. Now, here's your host.
So I'm really excited about this topic. A lot of our audience and a lot of people have this fear that if they leave the security of their job, it will mess up their family. Whereas you and I know, golly, being home with the kids, the more we can do it, the better. Like, I love being home, even when my kids interrupt my recordings. It's a little bit annoying, but I'd rather have that, to kind of have that life balance. One of my great regrets as a child was that my dad just worked so many hours. He was there for a lot of the life events, but he wasn't there very often day to day. I can't remember a time him coming home when the sun was still out. So can you tell me a little bit about that moment when you go, something's got to change?
Definitely. Well, for me, that's been a driving force in my life. And P.S., thanks for having me here. I'm excited to dive into this. Both of my parents passed away before they hit retirement. My mother died when I was 12. My dad died later in 2013, worked up right to the day he died. Just like you know, he was taking care of us, running his own business after mom died. And so we didn't see a lot of him. There wasn't a lot of family interaction. And once he passed, my youngest son had just been born. So I had 3 kids at that point. And I just knew, like, something has to be different. Now, I will say I got sucked right into working. I was still working full time. I was the primary income earner in my family. I have been for the last 20 years. And when that moment happened, I started really asking myself, there's got to be a better way. And I don't know if you've ever asked yourself that, but it seems like that question is the driving force that gets so many people to actually move on and change their life. So I know if you're listening to this and you're asking yourself, that's a good place to be, because that is going to be the catalyst for your change. But for me, that's what it was. There's got to be a better way. And it didn't happen right away. It definitely didn't happen right away, because that was 2013 when Dad passed away. And it wasn't until 2018 that we finally made our big shift where I left my corporate job and did the whole thing. So that's 5 years of planning and dreaming and wishing and figuring it all out. But looking back, that 5 years, even though in the moment it felt like forever, it felt like eternity, like it was never going to happen. Now I look back at it and I'm like, 5 years was not that much time when you look at the big picture. And it happened, and look what I was able to create. And that's the cool part.
Yeah. A lot of people, when they're thinking about this, especially when they're the main income earner and you already have kids, you already have a partner, they're a big part of the decision-making process. When you came home and said, I'm thinking about moving away from this job security, was there support at home, or was there wait, the common thing I hear is well, what about our insurance? What about these other, it's not so much the income, it's usually the other things that people really worry about, the other things that are part of the job security feel. What was that conversation like?
Okay, so for my family, we didn't have insurance. I have heard a lot of people have a nervousness about this. We were very fortunate that we didn't have any major medical issues where insurance was really critical for us. At the company I was working at, for our family to get full coverage insurance, it was still going to be $1,500 a month plus a $12,000 deductible. It was insane. I thought, why would anybody invest in this? I was making about $13,000 a month at the time. And so I said, I'm just going to pull money off and put it in a savings account and fund myself, And then also there's HSA programs. You can meet with like a financial planner. They have resources to help you. And there's these co-ops. So we started discovering alternative healthcare options that were so much more affordable, and they were more like critical care components, so that if we ever did get into a major accident or heart attack situation, that we were covered. But at the time, I was already going to a naturopath. I was taking my children to more holistic practitioners. So any of those doctor's visits wouldn't have been applied to my deductible anyway. I was self-funding my healthcare at the time. So for us, that wasn't a big thing. For us, the big thing was we were looking at relocating to a state we'd never been to. We had no friends or family. We had no job lined up. We were getting ourselves into a mortgage, right? And so we were going to have debt. It's a $3,000 house. So there was, you have bills. You're walking into debt, essentially, and trying to have faith about how is that going to work out? Where are we going to get the funds to make it by? We really had no idea. That was a very big unknown for us. And for us, that was the big scary thing, so to speak.
Yeah, what's really interesting is that some people think, oh, I have to wait till I have the security to jump in. And other people find out, oh, when there's a fire behind me, it actually motivates me and I find the money. Like one of the things, and this is something my wife has never understood because it's so strange for us. Whenever we have like a big bill coming or something happening, I find a way to open up a new project or some opportunity comes our way. And it kind of always works out. And I wonder if it's about the energy we put into the world, or just that once we plant the seed, telling everyone what we do and kind of opening up those business opportunities, then they can start to come our way. Whereas if we're constantly hesitant, then people are hesitant to work with us. Like those things can kind of happen. That's something I've noticed over the 12 years I've been doing this, is that when you only have one foot in, then people can sense that. They go, well, I'd rather hire someone to work, someone to do a project with someone who I know is 100%. And then more opportunities come your way.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I learned through this lesson, like through this transition, is how much we are our own creator. So in the beginning, I was one of those people who used to say, oh, this didn't work out, so it must not be meant to be, right? Have you ever said that? Like, it's just not meant to be. And what I learned, because we put an offer in. My husband is Canadian, so we'd put an offer in Canada. We were looking at moving to Canada. We'd put an offer in on a house in Priest River, Idaho. And I was very much trying to force it. I was really desperate to get out of my situation. But every time it fell through, I said, it must not be meant to be. And then I would go back into the pit, right, of working, and you get sucked right back into that lifestyle, because it's like you throw your hands up, you're like, oh, it didn't work out for me, so I'm just going to give up on the idea. It's not, if God wants it to be, it'll work out, right? People assume life is happening to them. And that's the false pretense right there. It wasn't happening to me. I was giving my power away by assuming things were going to happen for me and just magically happen. What shifted really was when it was a year after my daughter was born, so my fourth child. I again went through where she's being raised by a nanny. I missed out on all the firsts, and I was sick of it. I'm like, every child I've had, I've wanted to be home with them. I've wanted to experience these things. And here it is. I'm so many years into this. I just looked at my husband and I said, when are we going to start taking action and stop just talking about it? And I said, in that moment, I said, we have to like get clear about what we want and move forward no matter what happens. And let me tell you, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. Like, it was one of those things, looking back, I think to myself, I had so many opportunities to say, oh, this is a sign this isn't meant to be. I shouldn't be doing this. We could choose to take adverse things that happen to us and believe that they are a roadblock for a reason, so to speak. Or we could say, okay, this is a roadblock. I know I'm on the right path. I know I'm moving forward in this direction. What is my next step? How am I going to work through this? And rather than assuming it means to turn around and run, no, we just have to ask ourselves, what's the next step forward? And just take those baby steps through each situation until we're through it. And I'm telling you what, you get to a certain point where you push past the chaos and the crazy, and all of a sudden that's when things like, it's like the floodgates open, and finally the universe is like, or God or whatever it is, it's like, okay, you showed me you're committed, and here, and then just whoosh. I mean, my loan closed in less than 30 days. We found the perfect house. Like, everything started to work out perfectly once I got past all this chaos and decided and showed and proved to myself that I'm 100% committed. That's when my mindset changed. That's when I was like, I am the creator. I decided this for myself, and I just kept pushing at it until it was done. I didn't take no for an answer. I didn't accept that because I couldn't sell my house in Arizona fast enough that it wasn't going to work out. And that was scary too. Like, we ended up moving before we sold our house in Arizona, which was our cushion money that we were going to live on. So we had this period of time where we had very little money and we were on blind faith. But in the end, it all worked out. I mean, like, it worked out magically, but there was a lot of stress in the process. So it's a really interesting lesson that it's actually ironic, because it's a really interesting lesson. I love listening to my own story, as ironic as that sounds too, but because it's something that I forget again. Like, I even went through it, and then I get into new situations and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. That is what I do. I could do this. So we all need those reminders all throughout our life.
That's really good. You brought up two things that I think are so important. The first is how quick we are to give up our power. And every time I hear someone saying like, oh, it's someone else, whether they say luck or the universe, or they blame God or politics, they always blame some third party. That's like the first mistake a lot of us make. Go, oh, like, I didn't have the opportunity as a child, or I didn't have those things. And those things stink. I know that some people have different advantages, but we have the ability to turn things around. People from the worst like upbringings have built themselves to massive success. And a big part of it is making that decision that I'm be responsible for my wins and my losses. Because that feels bad. Like, the first time something goes wrong and you go, it's my fault, I didn't work hard enough, or I messed up. But it means you have the power to fix it. And that's really an empowering moment. So when you took that moment of control, I think that's really amazing, that realization that I'm in control. And the second thing you talk about is adversity. What I've noticed is that there are two ways people respond to a big challenge. One is it's an excuse to give up. So the people that aren't serious go, oh, you know what? It's too hard. It doesn't work. Whatever the model is, they go, building a course online or building a website, it doesn't really work. And now I've proven it. So they're kind of the people that were just dabbling. That's why I don't really love the word side hustle, because it's like, oh, I'm not really trying and it's on the side. And a lot of people are looking for an excuse to quit. And this happened and there was a big moment in books a few years ago. Amazon changed a bunch of rules about how you could launch a book and generate reviews. And a lot of people, 90% of the authors quit. They said, oh, it doesn't work anymore. And I remember that moment. I was doing okay with books at the time. And I said, oh my gosh, 90% of these readers need someone new. So I saw it as a huge opportunity. And a lot of the people I was working with went back to drudgery jobs. They were doing great stuff, and they just went to drudge jobs because they said, oh, this is impossible to overcome. And I said, no, I bet we can figure something out. And I did. And suddenly I had this huge market share. So sometimes when things are really adverse, the other people go, oh my gosh, everyone's quitting. That means there's more for me if I can figure this out. They see it as an opportunity mindset. And it sounds like that's what you did, which is amazing. I really love that, because a lot of people would be so scared. I know that's one of the biggest fears, is moving when you haven't sold your house. When my family moved cross country, I remember that experience where like we wanted to move during the summer between the two school years. Just there were 4 kids, and my parents had 4 kids as well. And just like I do. And they were like, oh, we have to move because of a business thing. My dad's business was moving, but at the same time, you don't want to leave that house behind, because that's scary, right? When a house is on the market more than 90 days, I know it starts to get really scary. So you really stepped out there, really like doubled down on yourself, which I think is amazing.
Yeah. Well, and there's something I heard along the way. This guy, I don't remember where I heard it, but he was talking about the sponsoring thought. Okay. I've always been a very like self-observed person, where I watch my thinking for the most part. And he said, whatever your sponsoring thought is, I think it might have been Wayne Dyer, actually, now that I'm saying it. But anyway, it's the thing that is the catalyst for whatever you're programming your brain. And I don't know, we've talked about the reticulated activating system. It's like that thing that makes things show up. Like if you're all of a sudden shopping for a certain car and then you suddenly see it everywhere because you program your brain to start looking for it, right? So we have to be aware of that sponsoring thought. If our sponsoring thought is doubtful, that's telling the universe or God or whatever. I'm very fluid with that, but in my mind, there is a higher power. And that is telling that energy that we have doubt. So the universe says, okay, fine. If you doubt, then this is what you get. You get failure because that's what you're expecting, because that's your sponsoring thought. So I say, pay attention to that. If you have doubt, ask yourself, what is it that's making you doubt? What's your fear? What can give you that security blanket to help you walk through that next step and overcome that doubt? And here's the best way I've found. So this is my tip of the day, okay? The best way I have found is to lean into that doubt and almost like reverse psychology yourself. So look, I understand that I have doubt about starting this new program. I question it every day. I'm going back and forth about it. However, it's okay. That's normal. That means that I'm really giving it some good thought and I'm thinking through it clearly and I'm giving it my best energy and I want to put behind it. And guess what else? I know it's possible to be successful. I know it's possible because other people are doing it. See how I'm like spinning myself up? So I leaned into the negative and then I reverse it and I turn it into a positive. I believe in the possibility that this can happen. And that's all you need today. All you need today is to believe in the possibility and shift that sponsoring thought so that your reticulated activating system can start focusing on the outcome being the positive that you want. But you have to constantly be mindful and like weed your garden, right? Your mind is your garden. You got to pull those weeds and turn those thoughts around 100% of the time that you hear them. And the more you do that, the less they come up. Just like when you weed your garden, the less weeds come up. And the faster everything starts to come for you. So essentially, that's kind of what ended up happening.
I think that's really great because so often people want to learn the mechanics of building a business, the process, and skip over the mindset of the mentality. And then when something tough happens, they're not ready for it. And I see this all the time. There's a lot of times people say teach mindset before they teach the mechanics. And everyone skips those videos, right? We skip those chapters of the book. Like, no, I have confidence. I don't need to write down my goals. I'm good on that. And we skip that part, not realizing there's a reason people put it at the beginning of the book all the time. And that is that our thoughts is where most of the game is fought. 90% of it's in here. Because if we're expecting to fail, then we'll find confirmations. If we're looking for proof that a program or system or process doesn't work, we'll find what we're looking for. And so we can actually self-sabotage without realizing it because we keep going, I know this probably won't work, or I doubt this will work. It's kind of like when people have these really negative thoughts about money, like all rich people are evil or money changes you. When you have those beliefs, it really holds you back. And I've met people that have really strong beliefs that, and if you make any money, you must be a bad person, that the only way to get rich is by crushing the poor. You can't make money and do good things. And they never make any revenue. If you have this strong belief, because nobody wants to become a monster, right? If you're convinced it will make you bad, then a part of you is always self-sabotaging. So this is really great. I think this is really wonderful. Now, your main focus is specifically helping mothers who want to spend more time with their kids. So I'd love to hear about some of the things that they struggle with specifically, like some of the thoughts. And I know that I had those same things. I didn't want to miss my kids' first steps or first words or the potty training moments. But what are some of those other parts that are unique to mothers that can sometimes be a mental thought that holds them back or a limitation when they're thinking about transitioning to building their own business and kind of being the boss of the operation so they can spend more time at home?
So the big thing is you're giving up more time to get more time, if you think about it. So initially, if you're starting a business while working, which is what I did because I was the primary income earner, so I couldn't just quit my job. I had to finagle that. I've always been working on the side to get things up to a certain point. Now, I will admit, you're right about that side hustle. That is a mindset. And until you're all in, it's just not going to pay out the way you need it to, because it wasn't for me until I made it my full time. I just went on a limb again, quit my second job that I had up here in Idaho and went after my business full time. That's the only time that I ever made it really successful. But during that time, during that time, I found that um, the hardest part was saying no to my kids. And I mean, I think this is the part that every parent who longs to be with them can feel from the depths of their soul, is when your child says, "Mommy, will you cuddle with me?" Or, "Mommy, can we go to the park today?" And you can't because you're either working, right? Or you're not working. Even if you're only working a Monday through Friday job, now your weekends are packed with house chores and laundry and all those things you have to get done. So you still don't have time to spend with your kids. It's constantly juggling your life, feeling like you're never enough for your children. That pain is so real. I think that's the part that gets worse before it gets better. And that's the part that people have to face and really steel themselves to walk through that part of it.
I think that you're onto something really brilliant there, because we want it to be the quick success. And we see that a lot. There's so much marketing, right, that says, oh, you can build a business in 30 days, generate revenue in 30 days. And for some people, they do hit the jackpot right out the gate. But for me, I went through a massive desert. I moved back into my mom's basement for a year. Then I lived on my friend's couch in a studio apartment for a year. So the first 2 years of building my business, my life took a major dip as far as quality of life. And then things turned around. But there's that period of sacrifice, the desert, the period of challenge that it can be really hard to get through if we're not really focused on that goal. That, I think that's the period when people go, oh, this is too hard, I'm out of here, without realizing, no, once you get through that period, like, I was fortunate enough that it happened before my children, so I got to be there for all those moments. But yeah, those times when I sometimes have to be working, especially if I'm working on a big project, sometimes I'm unavailable for 3 or 4 days. I'm like, guys, I love you, but I just have to really get this thing done so we can do something amazing on the other side, because daddy's got to pay for the school, daddy's got to pay for the food, daddy's got to pay the bills. And yeah, you do miss some moments, but the trade-off is so amazing when you can be there for so many. Like, I kind of have a policy. If my kids, anytime I'm working, if I'm not on a call and my kids go, can we go swimming? I always go swimming with them. I was like, that's one of the things I decided to do, because it's like a 20-minute thing. We're not leaving the house. We're lucky enough that we have a pool right now. But sometimes they want to do something big or they go out without me. And I'm like, oh, I wish I was at the fair with them today. So sometimes we still have to sacrifice from home. But knowing that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, I think is so good. And realizing that, it's like that old saying, like, you quit a 40-hour week job to have a 100-hour week job just so you can be the boss. That is a period we all have to go through. But then at least having the ability to make those decisions can be so good. And learning to say no, that's a big one, because a lot of us, as parents or even in business, we say yes to every opportunity. When we start to say no, we start to say yes to the right opportunities.
That's very true. That's very true. Well, and you can only do that if you have the clarity about what you want, and it's like a burning desire. I mean, it's what Napoleon Hill talks about in Think and Grow Rich. I never really understood that. I read that book years ago, and it really wasn't until I wanted to move to Idaho, until I wanted to start my business and really do it. Like, it's a burning desire. And once you feel that, once you have a knowledge of what that feeling is, that can really be the guideline for you, almost like your blinders can be put on, because you now know where you're going and what you're going to do to get there, So if you don't have that, then you're not quite there yet. Like, if you don't have that burning desire, it's still coming. Like, it's going to happen, but you will get to a point where your desire becomes so intense that nothing can stop you. I mean, literally nothing. Like, I will never go back to another job. I just can't. The idea of it just, I don't know, it makes me sick to my stomach. But when I think about my business, I have this burning desire to take it to the next level, to do this. I know that's the direction that's right for me. And now I've had that feeling enough. Once you have it, you can identify it, and it can help you make those decisions and know when to say yes or no to a situation.
I think that's really good. A lot of us, at least for me, I would take on projects that were not the right fit early days. And what I discovered is when you're working on a project that's not the right fit, it's stressful, the money's never worth it, it doesn't feel right. And then a big opportunity is the right opportunity comes your way and you don't have the time to do it or the bandwidth. So I've even seen that, where, at least in my own experience, so that knowing the right thing for you, once you start to feel that, you can drive in that direction. You bring in the right opportunities. And a lot of it, again, it's so amazing how much of it comes back to mindset because you draw the right people to you. I recently, I got a message. I was doing a live event about 8 months ago, and someone says, "Why don't you have any women speakers?" I had like two. And I said, "I don't know that many women entrepreneurs." And since then, I kind of made it, I said, I got to meet more amazing women. I buy a lot of women products. I love to buy products by women because the perspective is different. And when I bring those into my marketing, the people I'm competing with don't know about it. So it's like a secret weapon. I love beautiful ways that women market it so much friendlier. There's so much interestingness. And since then, I've had tons of amazing female entrepreneurs on my podcast. I have a bunch coming up. It's almost becoming the majority of my interviews are shifting to women. And it all became because I kind of manifested it thinking, I really wish I did know more amazing women entrepreneurs because I love the way women market. I love the way all these really cool things that are happening that aren't happening in my part of the industry. Male marketing is very aggressive and I can tell by looking at a website immediately if it's a man's website or a lady's website because ladies' website is so welcoming, so friendly. It's like a happier place to be. It's like, welcome, we're going to have a great time today. We're going to hang out. And every man's website is like, look, you got a problem. I'm going to solve it, but it's going to be expensive, right? It's always a picture of the man always has a picture of him on stage.
I love your observation.
Audience. And the lady website is always like socks, coffee cup in front of a window. And it's like at home and happy. And I'm like, I want to hang out there. Like, that's how I want to feel. So I love that. And you're exactly right. When I started thinking about that, someone sent me that email. And I was like, I've tried. I invited every woman I know. I knew it two at the time, great marketers. And now I know like 40 or 50. And it came from that conscious decision. It's kind of like you said, once you're looking for Toyotas, all you see is Toyotas. But a lot of it happens inside your head when you go, I'm all in. And I feel the same way. Like I could never go back to work. The thought of like someone telling me what time to get up or what time to go to bed or what to wear to work, I couldn't do any of those things. I've kind of become like a wild horse that's untamable again. It's like, no, I've reverted. I've lost that ability to have someone tell me what to do. I mean, with my last job, oh my gosh, I had one of those jobs where inefficiency was built into it. They were like, Jonathan, you're finishing tasks too fast. And people were getting mad at me. I didn't know how to deal with that. Like, I wasn't ready for that. Like government work, this was in the education sector. It's the same thing. Like I was working at a large university. I remember they were like, this job should take you 6 months. And it took me 45 minutes. And I was like, oh no, I don't know how to I don't know how to spend 45 minutes in 6 months. I just didn't know what to do. And so I would take like 2-hour walks. I just had to fill the 8 hours because they would give me the task for the day. I'd be done in 30 minutes or so. And everyone else who worked in the department was really, let's just say my coworkers were not friendly. I was like, I don't know how to do it. I wasn't born with that slow roll ability that you need when you do government work where, if you don't spend the whole budget, next year the budget's smaller. If you don't fill your days, we'll give you more work. So I think that is part of that entrepreneurial spirit where we go, no, I want to do the things that matter to me. And I have this, once you find that passion, it's so exciting to manifest and to generate the business that you want. And a lot of it is just going all in. Because once you really believe it and go, I'm going to do whatever it takes to take, those are the people that succeed. Every time I see someone starting out, it's the mindset that makes a difference on the success rather than the technique or skill level they start with.
Well, that's a great, truth. And I'm grateful that we're having this conversation because I think that's something that even I've overlooked. I've spent most of my life in my head doing, self-help. I'm a self-help junkie. I've always been, I started working with a thought coach when I was 19. So it's something that I've literally lived I'm 40 now. So it's 20 years that I've been, 100% in on that. And so when I hear that from other people, like I get into their programs and it's all about mindset, I skip over it too. But then I go back and I go, Lindsay, what if you only get one new thing? Or what if you hear that one thing that you forgot? Like, do it anyway. And everybody needs that lesson. Like, it's just such an important part of anything we're trying to do, whether it's business, whether it's life, it doesn't matter. The mindset is the catalyst that makes joy happen.
Yeah. And sometimes it's the smallest nugget that you get from that section. One of the best things I ever learned was about focus. One of my problems is that I get excited by too many projects. He said, if you're trying to learn to do Facebook ads, That's the only thing you're doing. It gets 100% of your focus. You'll learn in a certain amount of time. If you decide to start a blog at the same time, now each gets 50% of your focus. Now everything takes twice as long. If you're adding in a podcast, everything takes 3 times as long. And I was like, that one lesson blew my mind. I was like, I wish I'd figured this out 10 years ago. The people who just do one thing excellently, that's when you can go the furthest, when you start to remove the distraction. So that was one of the biggest lessons I learned, is that this one mindset lesson of how focus is your most valuable resource. And I notice it in my life on days where I'm doing podcast interviews, I can't really do anything else because it takes all my mental energy, even if whether I'm doing 8 episodes or 2 episodes. I can't really do anything else on that day because it takes up most of my bandwidth, the preparation, the thoughts, preparing what I'm going to interview and thinking about it. I can't really sit down and write a blog post in between 2 interviews. My mind just doesn't work that way. So knowing the value of focus, I think will people dial in, because so many people try a bunch of things at once. I think that's the other big mistake, is I'm going to try 20 ideas and see which one hits. And it's like better to try one idea all the way. So I love what you're sharing. I think this has been a really amazing episode. I think it's going to really inspire people in a lot of ways. If there's one other last thought you'd love to share with our audience, what do you think is one other thing that can help people to stay the course and stay encouraged when they're going through those moments of doubt?
Well, I think to pare it down to a 3-step process, I've kind of looked back at my life, looked back at the choices I made, and I can condense it into 3 steps. And so if you can just remember this as you're walking through whatever journey you're on, this may be helpful. Number 1, get super clear about whatever it is you want. Like, you can taste it, you can feel it. I used to do visualizations about Idaho. I'd never been there. And then when we drove through the state, we drove past places where I'm like, oh my stars, I visualized that spot. I literally imagined my feet in that river. It was so crystal clear to me. That is number 1. Number 2 is to be specific about, now after you have your vision, the vision's always the high level, then you get very specific about the strategy. We made a document. I wrote this document up. It was, my husband's name's Lee, so it was Lindsay and Lee's plan to live in our log cabin in the woods by December 2018 at the top. And I wrote out the plan. And I forgot that I wrote this. And it was actually just last year that I found this document and I got chills, because we moved in December 2018. And then the third thing is to put on your blinders and stay 100% focused and committed to your decision, no matter what happens. Just, if the date that you scheduled doesn't happen, which it did for us, but if it doesn't, you just readjust the date, but you just keep moving forward. So those 3 tips is the best way that you can tackle anything that you have going on in your life.
It's been amazing, Lindsay. I think that people are going to love this episode. It's probably become one of my most popular episodes of the year. So thank you so much for spending time with me. I really appreciate it. I'm excited about a lot of the things that you're working on and see what the future brings for your business. Where can people spend more time with you, see what you're working on, and really get to know you online?
Yeah. Well, my website's thepassiveincomeexaminer.com. That's my podcast also. So if you're interested, I have a freebie. Everybody, if you're interested in looking for ways to make passive income, it's text the word PIE, P-I-E, to 33777, and you can get 5 ways to earn $5K a month with passive income.
That's amazing. I think people are going to do that. Expect a lot of texts coming your way. Thank you so much for being here. This was amazing.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Making that first dollar online doesn't have to be daunting. I've got you covered. Get my free guide on how to make your first $1,000 online right now at servemaster.com/1K.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Serve No Master podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss another episode. We'll be back next week with more tips and tactics on how to escape the rat race. Please take a moment to leave a review at servenomaster.com/iTunes. It helps the show grow, and more listeners means more content for you. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.